Well, again, good morning. Today we're going to be finishing up our series that we've been in for the last few weeks of looking at His feet, about what it means to be a people who are called to whole life worship. Over the past 7 weeks, this being our 8th week in it, we've looked at the presence over productivity, about worship and how it should drive our work. It should drive what we do. It should drive us rather than us feeling obligated. We should do it out of a sense of worship that brings joy. That worship is something that comes from the inside out. That worship is not primarily about the songs or the things that we do, but instead it's about the lives that we offer. We looked about the posture of worship, but also about the risk of us being critical of others' worships. About how worship it really does matter what motivates us. That we serve, and the way we serve, it shapes not just what we do, but it shapes our lives. We talked about how our worship should be everyday altars. We talked about how worship should send us. And then today, as we continue, we remember about last week that it was called that we are better together, that we're called to be a part of a community. But today, as we wrap up, I want to share with you that there's a passage in Scripture in the Old Testament I believe gives us one of the greatest pictures of what true worship looks like. It's in Daniel chapter 3. And as we look at Daniel chapter 3, we're going to see 3 young men who had been taken from their land, from their home. They had been brought into a culture and given new names. They'd been given a new world, in a sense, to try to change their identity. That's the thing that many people don't understand, that when Babylon conquered others, they would bring them into their society. They would include them into it. In the beginning of Daniel, we see the account of where they tried to feed them the king's meat as they trained them and taught them their language, gave them new names to literally change their way of thinking to mimic theirs. Today, I want to look at a few chapters later, after they have already been in the kingdom for a while, after they had even been put into positions of leadership. And now they have a new challenge on them because they're called to worship an image that's been set up above them. And again, they are reminded that, or we are reminded that we are not called to never bow before any other God before God. We're going to be reading in Daniel chapter 3. You may see in your notes that it says Daniel chapter 3, and it says page 467. You're trying to think what verse, right? You're going to have to keep up with me today, because I don't know that you can take just part of this passage without understanding what the whole context means. But we're going to look at it. We'll take it in pieces, but beginning in verse 1, it says, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar sent to gather the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, and the counselors, and the treasurers, and the justices, and the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the counselors and the treasurers and the justices the justices. That might have been just a Freudian slip, sorry. The justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province gathered for the dedication of the image of the King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, "You are commanded, O people, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, as soon as all the people heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. I want to stop there for a minute because Daniel chapter 3 here, it forces us a question that I don't think we can really avoid. And it's this: who or what do you bow to? That's one thing. Thank you for whoever helped me out there. I mean, I guarantee you there are people that are saying, you know, I'm kind of addicted to that bad boy. I look at kids and they're just like this all the time. It's funny because I look at parents at the restaurant like this all the time. But that is something that we could be bowing ourselves down to. But there's many other things. That just happened to be a coincidence. But who or what do you bow to? Because everyone bows to something. Maybe it's success, comfort, approval, security. Maybe it's our culture. Maybe it's power or reputation or wealth. The issue in Daniel chapter 3 is not whether people worship. It's not, well, are you going to worship? No, it's not a matter of whether we worship. The issue is who or what we worship. When we look at true worship of God, I believe there's a couple things that I want to look at today. The first one is this: that worship is tested by allegiance. If we are going to truly worship God, meaning not just coming together on Sunday morning and singing some songs and getting a good pep talk, but instead truly worshiping that overflows into our life, that affects our Mondays and Tuesdays and so forth, that there is going to be tests to our allegiance. See, the king had commanded, it wasn't just about a posture. It wasn't just about, hey, if you are in the presence, give a head nod. He called for direct bowing of worship to identify. Because if they did not bow, it would not be the same. It wouldn't be just a sense of when people were standing together, whenever they had the music play, they would go, okay, I'm worshiping. I'm paying attention to the idol. No, he required them to get down on their face and bow, a position, a posture that demonstrated their worship. And so the king had commanded that. But what he was really commanding and calling for was allegiance. He was saying, you will bow down to an image of me. You are going to be aligned with me. You are going to put your allegiance with me. Because bowing was about loyalty. Bowing meant identification. It meant that I identified as one under your control, under your power, under your worthiness. It also meant that you agreed. That you agreed to be in that position of bowing, of putting the other above you, to worshiping them. One thing I see is that pressure reveals allegiance, though. That when we are put into places and situations that cause pressure on us, it's going to show you where your allegiance falls. You will find it whether it's in kids at the playground or adults in business. When the kids come to the playground and they only have enough extra candy for a few of the friends, guess which ones gets them? The ones that they have an allegiance with. The ones they feel most connected with. Well, what if I don't have enough for everybody? Well, my best friends will get some. The ones that I'm aligned with. And so that may seem like a little thing, but let me tell you, as a 5 or 6 year old kid, that's a big deal. It's pressure. And we all experience pressures in different times in our lives. But pressure reveals what we are aligned to, where we have pledged our allegiance. And when we see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego here, we see that they had a great amount of pressure put on them. It was enormous. They had political pressure, there was cultural pressure, there was social pressure, and there was even legal consequences if they did not align with this. If you see that last verse we read, verse 7, it says, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. I want you to know that everyone else bowed. Everyone else bowed, because everyone bows to something. That may just be the hardest part, is that worship is tested when standing alone costs us something. When no one else will join us to worship the one true God, to pull ourselves away from things that try to draw us out of God's will, or to cause us to worship other things that become our gods. Standing alone when everybody else, it's not that big a deal. I mean, everybody else is doing it. If everybody else was jumping off, I know you guys had the same mom as I did, said the same thing, right? No, just because everybody else is jumping off the cliff doesn't mean I'm going to. And just because everybody else is worshiping something else doesn't mean we should. Because we have a God who said that you'll have no other gods before me, that you will worship me and you will worship me alone. So I don't care what everybody else does. I don't care what our culture says. I don't care what our society says. There's one God and we should worship him. But whole life worship is different than just coming together for ceremony. Whole life worship is not just expressed when we feel safe. Whole life worship is often, and many times even, about refusing to bow down to other things when it might be costly. Second thing I see in this passage, we'll begin in verse 8, but it's worship requires conviction. If you are truly going to worship when it costs you something, when it may have consequences, there needs to be a true conviction about it. Begin with me in verse 8. It says, therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. If you don't understand what that is saying there, he says there were some that were jealous of the Jews, and so they came to the king and they tried to butter him up, said, "Oh, king, live forever. You're so great. You're so kind. You're wonderful." He says in verse 10, "You, O king, have made a decree, and every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every other kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious, raged, and commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said to them, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and, well, every type of music, you fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into the burning fiery furnace. And who is your God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter." Let me tell you another translation how it says. It says, "We are not careful on how we answer you. If it be so, Our God, whom you serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Did you see their response? There was no panic. There was no rage. There was no dramatic speech of looking over at these others that accused him and says, do you know what they've been saying behind your back? Do you know what they've done? We've always done what you've asked us to do. This is the only thing that we've not done because it goes against our God. They didn't have that. All they said, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us. What a powerful statement. And then continues, says, but if not, we will not serve your gods. This may be the most mature statement of worship in Scripture. You realize that what they said was, our God can, but even if he doesn't. There are times that all of us have been in places in our life that we may be praying about something, and we have this position of, I believe God can, but what happens when he doesn't? What happens when he doesn't do it the way we think he should? When it goes a different direction, does it change the way we view him? Does it change the way we worship? It shouldn't. Not if we are truly walking into a mature position of worship that it's not just a Sunday morning thing or a Wednesday night thing or maybe even getting up in the morning and starting my Bible time thing. But if worship is my life and it promotes everything I do, it inspires everything I do, then our worship is something that enwraps us. See, that's worship that's without conditions. I will worship even if. That's a devotion not dependent on the outcome. We can look into the New Testament and see where Paul and Silas had been thrown into the prison. They had been condemned to death in the morning. They'd been beaten. And they're sitting in the prison, in this inner cave, being guarded, with death looming them the next morning. And it says that they began to pray and praise. You know what? They weren't praying and praising because they believed it was going to get them out of there. They were praying and praising because God was worthy. And when I have nothing else to do, I can continue to believe that God can, but even if, I will continue to worship. I will continue to give him my all. I will continue to express my love and value. But real worship says God is worthy, even if he doesn't rescue me the way I want. Third is this: worship stands in the fire. See, they're thrown into the fire, and something astonishing happens. See, they had stoked the fire hotter. They had taken him and bound him and put ropes around him and thrown him in the fire. The hot fire was so hot that even the guards that threw him in, the mighty men, they died because of the heat. But I want to pick back up at verse 24. It says, then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. He answered and said, but I see 4 men, unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire. and the satraps and prefects, the governors and the kings and the counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of these men. The hair on their head was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire came upon them. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him, and set aside the king's commands, and yielded up their bodies, rather than serve and worship any god except their own God." He says, "Did we not cast 3 men bound in the fire? But I see 4 walking around. And the 4th one looks like the Son of God." See, the furnace did not remove them from their circumstance. They were thrown into the fire. Did that change their position? Did it remove them from that position? No, they were in the fire. But it didn't remove them, but the furnace did reveal the presence of God. And it didn't just reveal the presence of God to those 3 men. That's what I love about this passage. What's so powerful about this passage here is our worship, when it is complete, when it is full, when it is what we are, it becomes something that others look on to and they see something real. They see something worth dying for. They see something worth living for. Because it's not just preference. It's not just entertainment. It is worship to the one true God who is worthy of all of our worship and all of our praise. But God met them in it. The truth is that worship does not always remove us from the fire. It doesn't always remove us from the circumstance. But I believe it guarantees us that we will not face that alone. That we will find ourselves into the presence of God. That He will walk with us. He'll show up as that 4th man in the fire. Well, it sure is hot in here. And when that 4th man shows up, it's not that hot. It says the heat didn't even bother them. They're walking around with no hurt. Their hair not singed. Smell of smoke not even on them. When they come out, it says they did not smell like smoke. Faithfulness in the fire becomes a testimony to the king. Understand the faithfulness that you live in your fire can be a testimony to others. Daniel 3, it really does, I think, force us to ask the question, what is the golden image in our culture? What is it that we are being called to bow down to? What plays the music that causes our pressure? Can you imagine that feeling that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego might have had? They knew the decree. They knew that it was going to happen. And as soon as the music plays, did they have to make a decision? I want to tell you, I believe they made the decision long before the music played. If the music had played and they had to make the decision then, they may have fallen down on their faces and worshiped along with them. I've heard people say that, if you make Sunday morning church a Sunday morning decision, we'll see you next week. Because if you wait to make your decisions on how you're going to come or whether you're going to worship for the circumstance to hit you, you've already missed the opportunity. There's too much pressure. We need to know what our worship is, what we'll do when circumstances arise, what quietly demands our allegiance. What is it? What is calling us to that? Is it money, politics? Is it comfort or our status? Is there things that we fear, so therefore we run away or we run towards? Is our allegiance just simply to ourselves? But whole life worship means that we bow only to the Lord, that we refuse to bow down to idols. Not just idols that we may stand up and we can see the statue of, but the idols that we have allowed to become a part of our life. We remain faithful under the pressure when others are saying, come on, it's not a big deal. Follow us. It's okay. That we stand on what God has told us. Because what you bow to shapes who you become. As we close today, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said, even if he does not spare us, we will not bow. It's the same kind of a statement that Jesus made when he said, nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. That he gave his life, he endured rejection, he endured suffering, he endured the cross, and he did so when he laid down his life for us. He did not bow to fear. He did not bow to the powers. He did not try to escape, because he knew his Father, who is worthy, sent him there to do a job for you and for me. But church, whole life worship is not just Sunday singing. It's also Monday standing. It might be Wednesday refusing. Maybe things are coming up and they're going to pull you away from something you know you want to be a part of, you should be a part of. Maybe it's Friday trusting, but it truly is everyday allegiance. And when the music plays, will we bow down? Will we bow down, or will we stand and say, God, you are the only one worthy of my worship? Ladies and gentlemen, as we have spent several weeks looking at this idea of being at his feet, about worshiping him, about expressing both inwardly and outwardly our love and value to God. We can't say we love something if we ignore it most of the time. I could ask you husbands here. I could also ask you wives here. How well would your relationship be if you only spent a little bit of time together, that once a week you showed up and said, hey, I love you? You've heard the old man that said, I told my wife that once. If anything changes, I'll tell her. That doesn't work. Our love needs to be expressed. How do we do that? We do that by living a life of worship. Allow it to help us become the full disciples that Christ has called us to. Would you join me as we pray, though?